Yo, what is good, family? Hopefully, you guys are doing blessed. Here to go ahead and do another episode of Wyckoff Sundays for you guys. I was busy this weekend. The last couple of days have been busy, so we're going to go ahead and do it now. A little bit later, right? It's now Tuesday, but we're going to tap into what we think can happen for the coming week, all right? Now, firstly, let's go ahead and review what we spoke about last time, right? So the first thing we spoke about was dollar. So there was a couple different things that we were saying, right? Obviously, our initial idea, given, because of the order flow, was the potential for this to be a BU slash LPS. We spoke about some potential continuation zones. Our biggest thing was this area down here, right? So we had said if we see price go ahead and sell off from this level, that this could be an area where we get an initial reaction from. But we also mentioned how, again, when we have order flow kind of happening, this high up into the range, that we want to obviously, be careful because we could probably see areas like this get taken and this and all of that. So we'll go ahead and play that out here where we said that.
Mitigated.
But yeah.
So yeah, really two main zones. I mean, like how we want to look at this now really is that we're getting ready to really go ahead and get up into 102. So if we manage to get like a sell-off, let's say from this zone, I would love that because then we could just go ahead and look for buys. So the next possible order flow area is going to be this manipulation here, right? This could be an idea there, although I do think, again, we don't really see order flow hold up too well high up into the ranges. It just becomes a little too easy. So personally for me, I'd want to see like things get swept out. So either one, seeing these get broken and then look for this, or two, maybe even deeper, right? To see that, right? So those are going to be the two zones I'm going to call out for Wyckoff Sundays. It's going to be right, in this order flow from the beginning of last week, and two, if we can take out the low of the week last week and actually get back down into this extreme area while still holding here.
So yeah, that was basically our initial idea, as you guys heard. So, really seeing, again, obviously seeing a pullback, not really seeing this order flow hold up longer term. We did talk about the potential for this to hold just because it was the last point of order flow. But that being said, again, what we did want to see was that break because, again, when it's too easy like this, eventually we're going to see those buyers get cleared out, pretty easily and quickly, right? So our idea was, all right, can we see a sweep while holding this low? Obviously, as we can see, I think that the sweep did happen, but we didn't end up holding the low, right? So it's always tough to say how far the sweep can really go. We did like the way that this low looked, but there were other zones that, could get hit that we had been speaking about for weeks, right? Like, for example, the daily time frame imbalance that we have just recently filled, right? So, looking at this, here, right, really, the only way to really see the shorts was later on in the week. So during our live stream last Tuesday, we did speak about this here, right? Obviously, we couldn't really see this on Wyckoff Sundays, but there was essentially a couple different things that we had seen. So firstly, obviously, the zone where previously we saw manipulation had just barely been taken with this 4-hour institutional candle here. We can see a 2-hour institutional candle there. We can see a 1-hour institutional candle, right? All in this one push to the upside, right? Even if we go to the 30-minute and stuff as well, it's not necessarily an institutional candle, but you can see the way that we just very quickly go up before sharply heading back down, right? So that manipulation there really gave us the idea that we could probably see this start to head lower. So after Tuesday, ever since then we spoke about the potential for this zone to hit and react from, and we could see that on Wednesday we did get the retest to give us that next sell-off to the downside. So it really was a beautiful, call out for the sells, although obviously it didn't happen on Wyckoff Sundays. That's why it's important to be on the live streams during the week. If you guys want access to those as well, obviously reach out at any time on the Discord, right? But yeah, so we did speak about this area, right? We spoke about the probability of seeing the sell-off, given that we had all this order flow, probably was going to end up being taken. Although it definitely did go a lot farther than I thought, right? But that being said, that's fine. Again, we are still kind of looking for, can this daily time frame here really end up being that full accumulation that breaks the high over here, which is why we're waiting to see can 102 get taken, right? So if we can manage to hold order flow here up top, I think we're still in a good place to to buy back up, right? We really don't want to go too far down. Like if we start to break like this low down in here, that's going to change the perspective, and maybe this redistribution kicked in a little early without breaking the high. But for now, I don't want to change that idea at all, right? So I think that for me, 102 is still going to be the target, given that it is, the beginning of that accumulation that we see here. So that should be our minimum target, most of the time. So, just because we had this big sell-off, for me, doesn't necessarily change our idea for it, right? We're still waiting for 102 to hit. It's obviously just going to happen, I think, in a different way. Now, that being said, we'll talk about the future a little bit later on. Actually, sorry, I realize I'm getting ahead of myself. Right now, we're going through the review, but that's what happened last week, right? So the initial zone here played out. We did talk about sells on Tuesday and Wednesday to go ahead and see this drop, which happened beautifully. And then, from there, obviously, there was really no reason to buy in the areas that we spoke about last week, like let's say here or here. We didn't really get any breaks in structure, from that point, right? All we had was this small little pullback and then just really straight bearishness. So there's really no reason to buy down there unless you were just trying to catch a trade without having the full lower time frame confirmations that we need, right? Which we can clearly see didn't really happen here. In this zone, and in this zone, you could maybe say it happened there, but after seeing it come back, definitely would have been, a reason to close out, right? All things considered. But yeah, that's really what we want to be looking for is changes in structure on that lower time frame, right? Kind of like we had with all these buy opportunities there, or with the previous buy opportunities, that we had here, 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 right? That's how we want to see things play out. Now, anyways, let's go ahead and tap into the next section of what we were looking for. So, firstly was Euro USD, right? So, one of the things we spoke about was this area up here. We spoke about sells potential from this, I believe it's an hourly area or something like that. I believe 4 hour even has an institutional candle. We did get a nice reaction from it, and then obviously we saw the same sweeps that we had on on dollar, right? And then from there we just continue to go higher. So we can see the break in structure happened here, right? But when Wyckoff Sundays ended, we basically went straight into that area and went straight to a new low, right? So this selling opportunity from here was actually really good. We did actually have a potential for a 1 to 3 to happen there. And obviously we can see the buildup in liquidity that happened here. We can see the internal low as well that was taken at the same time as that liquidity with this push to the downside, right? So seeing both, the current lows here being taken, right, and this low being taken with the same sweep, really only confirmed even further what we were talking about on Tuesday with this dollar high, that we could potentially see Euro USD basically follow suit with that, right? Because we can see this also happen on Tuesday, and then this one here happened on Wednesday, which was the mitigation on dollar. That we see right there, right? So yeah, Euro USD, again, the reversal was also clear after having taken that low, right? We did want to see eventually price get down to here. We'll see if that can still happen, right? This could, and we'll talk about what we could see happening later on. I don't want to get ahead of myself again, right? Another thing that we spoke about on the Tuesday was the potential for the GU longs here, right? So we can go ahead and take a look at what we spoke about here last week, though, real quick. So yeah, with GU, obviously, the biggest thing we had wanted to see was a bigger retracement, right? We still got that, right? Like we had price, go ahead and hold these relatively equal highs that we've been talking about. So we did eventually get up there, but first we went ahead and accumulated below the lows of the distribution, right? So turning this into a potential reaccumulation. I think GU was one of the cleanest for this. We can see how we have the distribution that we spoke about here, right? I'm going to delete this here. So yeah, we had this distribution here that you can see is boxed up. We come down, we take the low, and we see this multiple drive push to the downside, ending off with a nice sweep here as well on the higher time frame. I believe it's the 2 hour actually, where we have all these equal lows swept, break above, retracement, and then that ends up holding before then continuing us to the upside, right? So there's some potential for this here to have been that reaccumulation. that could potentially reverse price, but again, we'll talk about the future in a little bit. But yeah, we did end up reaching up towards those relatively equal highs and sweeping through there. So interesting price action there on GU. Definitely was some opportunities for the buys to bring us up there, right, to where we were talking about. But you would have had to have again seen that when it happened later on, because we did end up having one more low, equal lows. We had the sweep, retracement, right, and then price came up after that, right? So there was a buy opportunity down here. Again, it was something you really would have had to have been on the live streams to have been updated about, because we couldn't really see that happening, right? This sweep didn't exist when Wyckoff Sundays went live, last week, right? Because we were over here. So yeah, that's GU, right? Then there was AU. We did actually draw up a pretty clear trade idea here, which I believe was right here. So we spoke about entries above this high, right? To go ahead and go for a 1 to 3 down below these relatively equal lows that we can see right there, right? That idea did play out pretty much to the T, as we can see here. This was the zone that we spoke about there on the Wyckoff Sundays, getting back into that imbalanced area. And then from there, we ended up seeing a really nice drop, which did hit the TP that we wrote on the call, but went even further a little bit, basically to a 1 to 4 risk to reward there, right? Before then, obviously seeing the buying reversal that we saw across the board, right? So that was AU, good initial idea from the Sunday. And then we saw things reverse. Now there's also gold, right? So gold here, we spoke about this imbalanced area and this institutional candle up there, right? Which did end up playing out very beautifully as well. If we go ahead and look here, we can go and find that imbalance right in here, right? So pretty much right after the session, we gapped right up into that imbalance and had a very nice sell-off, right? At the bottom of that sell-off, we can see institutional candle sweeps. We do see even price get back up into there, right? Tap that zone one more time and give another big sell-off. And also, again, tapping back into that level. But I think this here, again, kind of like with the other currencies, that was like our sign of the potential reversals that were coming, for dollar and everything else, right? Although we still haven't really broken that zone that we have spoken about last Sunday, right? But this sell-off from here to here was very sizable, right? Beautiful reaction off of our zone. Looks like that's from 4,100 all the way down to 4,000. So it's about 1,000 pips or so, right? If I'm not mistaken, that you could have taken advantage of there based off of the Wyckoff Sundays call out that we had right there, right? So yeah, really, really nice. Again, still waiting to see if we can get this bigger time frame sweep on these. As we can see here, like with that low, like with things like silver and stuff like that. With silver, we also spoke about, again, like the probability of seeing a pullback and a sell-off from that high there.
In the beginning, back up into this institutional, that would be pretty much a similar idea. Institutional candles all the way up here.
Yeah, so that was the zone we were talking about there for silver. And that's pretty much what happened. We saw silver trade into that area right there, right? Give a sell-off, but just like with gold, right? We ended up reacting off of the lows that were created after we made the new lower low, right? Because we could see new lower low happened right here, right? We had this, low pretty much get swept, just like with gold, right? Although silver had one more sweep. When gold mitigated here, silver made another low here, right? But yeah, very, very similar price action with the two of them. Hopefully we can get that lower price action. We'll talk about the future in a little bit. Next thing here was NAS. We spoke about how we were basically right into these lows and that we were likely going to continue to go down. I did end up holding on to my shorts a little bit longer. Took more partials last week before getting, the runners stopped at break even this week, which we'll show right now. So as we can see, this is NASDAQ. So this is where we were when the week started. Small push up, and then we had a sizable push down. So the shorts that I had, went really, really well over the next day or so. And really what we can see happen here was just that shift during the end of last week, which was shown by this accumulation that happened here Wednesday and Thursday, right? So as we can see, my entry was all the way up here. And then we can see that down here, well, we probably shouldn't go to the 1 hour here. I think the 2 hour would be a little bit better. We can see the type of accumulation that really played out, right? So kind of looking at it like a three drive push to the downside, we can see that this push to the downside from here to here was that final manipulation down for this. So kind of making it look like, all right, maybe could it be that after we swept those equal lows that happened there, right? Maybe that could actually end up being the reaccumulation type of play that brings us higher, right? Could definitely be the case going forward. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But yeah, some of the biggest signs of this were the beautiful 4 hour institutional candle that printed right here, right? As well as I believe on the daily, we have a beautiful down candle here as well before we see that engulf with this up candle. So I think that these give some potentials for, NAS to maybe continue its push, which looks good to me, right? Which looks good to me. So like I said, we did say that, this could end up being a continuation down. I think we did even, yeah, we did actually get this as well. So we spoke about this daily candle here. And that daily candle did get tapped into the following day, as we can see right here on the Sunday. Price tapped back in right there. I should make this white here so you can see it better, but yeah, right there, right? So we can see that price taps right back into that area that we spoke about on Wyckoff Sundays last week. So it was still really good. And then it reversed, right? And then we had S&P 500 as well. We spoke about the same area, US 30 as well, right? So again, kind of just, we were calling out one more sell before then seeing the push to the downside, then start to see things reverse, right? So we can see here, I believe that this was the zone here where we had the market come back into for a, yeah, that should be it. So yeah, right here was the Tuesday, right? We saw price get back up into that area, creating that one final sell-off. And as we could see the change happening right here with that institutional down candle that goes ahead and sweeps that low right there, right? So to me, it is looking pretty bullish right now. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Same thing with US 30. We flipped things right over in there as well during the week, right? So again, just being updated with those calls that we have is really important, because there are certain things obviously we can't see on the Sunday and that we can only see as price really progresses. So yeah, that's US 30 indices and NASDAQ. Last one we had was BTC, which was the setup that we said was our favorite for the week, which we'll talk about here.
And then hopefully down here, we're really going to be the move for BTC, and then we can start to look to short, because I think basically it's looking more and more this year. But honestly, guys, I really do like this one. So if we can go ahead and buy up and then short off, I think we can even get this to go towards 61. So out of all of them, I do like BTC a lot for that. And if dollar does buy up, then that's going to be, really aligning with that idea. So
yeah, we said BTC was probably the one that we liked the most. Even with dollar going down, I mean, we still really not had too much strength in BTC from that. But again, the move from here, right? So we pretty much had Wyckoff Sundays in there. We had the push to the upside, and then BTC had a amazing sell-off to the downside twice, really, right? So we had this move down from around 65.7 all the way down to around 62.9, so a good amount of pips to catch there. And then again, we had a move down happening here as well, right? So two beautiful sell-offs from this area. Didn't quite reach towards 61, but for me, I did end up taking profit on this idea here, and we'll talk about what we can see for the coming week now. All right, guys, so hopefully this makes sense to you guys. Last week was good to start off the week. We did have a lot of ideas that went the right way, but again, around Tuesday, Wednesday last week was where things really flipped, right? And that's something that, again, you just have to be able to react to, either one, by being on the live sessions, or two, by, obviously using your own knowledge of manipulation, institutional candles, and everything that we talk about Wyckoff on these calls, right? Cool. So let's go ahead and talk about dollar. All right. So like I said before, I do think that dollar is still accumulating. Personally, I think that this push to the downside is just a bigger opportunity for us to get a bigger risk to reward from this. I think that even with the low that we had recently created, I think this this actually has a chance to be a bottom. Even though we haven't really had like, necessarily like a big buy up from the area. I think that like, with what we did in terms of, taking out this recent low here, right? Like there's a couple of lows that kind of built up here in this level. So if we kind of look at it like here, right? Like the amount of buyers that came in there probably got swept out with these next two candles. And then we start to see price head to the upside, creating things like trap candles here, right? Before pushing us higher. So honestly, even looking at the daily here, right? Even looking at this as a potential down move that could be the manipulation, even though it's not a strong down candle. I mean, obviously we can see the previous daily candles are very strong as they sweep this low, right? So to be honest, it could be more of like a weekly down move, right? And then we end up seeing the next, candle really go ahead and come bullish could be the idea, or start to come bullish and head towards these highs here at 100.4. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I think that this big wick over here can end up eventually being a target, right? And that, we can potentially buy up towards those levels, right? So I think that probably we're still going to see another sweep down. We could see these relatively, equal lows that are happening there with wicks, right? So I don't think that those will be a bottom, but either one, seeing a sweep down and hold this level, or two, just seeing a sweep internally, right? And then holding essentially this low here as the extreme area, I think is going to be what I want to follow here. Again, we are inside of a zone where there previously was a reaccumulation, right? We filled a daily imbalance. So I think that there is a decent chance for this to really hold. And I just think that even right now, like we're in that buy zone here, for that, right, to really be happening. So I think now it's just about looking at this as, okay, this is basically a potential phase two. This is a potential phase three that has engulfed the phase two. So now it's like, all right, can we get a phase four confirmation, right? Are we going to be able to see this here sweep, get a lower time frame, 5 phases happening, that we can go ahead and see this buy up towards new highs, right? And then, eventually kind of look at this whole push to the downside that happened last week as a manipulation that continues to bring us higher, right? I think that is going to be the move longer term, right? Again, we are still kind of waiting for that BU/LPS after the signs of strength here. So that's why I think that, again, we will probably see this continue to go higher. And honestly, today is, Tuesday, but we are inside of the Wednesday candle at the moment, technically, right? So, I think that even today with this Wednesday, we could potentially get this be a trap candle and this be a move to the upside that engulfs through this high, right? So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm thinking here with dollar. So potentially even seeing the low that we have here already kind of being the low, I think actually has a pretty decent chance of happening here, right? But it's just about having the patience inside of this mitigation phase, right? We got to really go ahead and get that confirmation that, manipulation is happening. Like if we see this sweep even during London session today or during New York session, maybe we get a sweep. I think that this could end up being a decent move to the upside to maybe reach there, right? If we do get another low, right, then in that case, again, we're gonna have to wait to see, all right, do we get an impulsive phase? Do we get a mitigation phase? And all of that to go ahead and drive us higher. But yeah, I think the way that the last daily candle printed does give us a chance to maybe see this next daily candle really go ahead and start to reach up, at least towards above here, right? So we'll see how that ends up going there on the daily. But yeah, I'm still optimistic about dollar. I think this push to the downside, again, we wanted to see that push down, just kind of take lows like this, but we never really know how far a sweep is going to go. We did anticipate a sweep coming, but we thought it could just be an internal one given that we had good manipulation in this area. But that's okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that the buy that we were kind of predicting from here is wrong, right? It just means that this accumulation is taking place over a longer period of time. And again, I don't think it's a reason to, give up on the buys at all. So for me, I think the buy bias is still there. And this BU/LPS is yet to be formed, right? So yeah, fingers crossed that we can end up getting that from this low here, all right? Now, relative to things like Euro USD, for example, I think that could be coming as well. We can see that we had the market go ahead and have like a really sizable buy to the upside from about here on the Wednesday. It's just so impulsive, it's so quick that to me it could even end up being like a UTAD of a redistribution, right? I wouldn't say it's confirmed yet, but that's obviously the idea that we're following with dollar going ahead and being, eventually coming bullish, right? So if we see a similar kind of idea on Euro USD, then I feel like going ahead and looking for these highs to be taken, I think would be a good idea. One thing that we can see happening recently is, these lows here. I think these lows do not really look very strong to me. And these are the kind of things that we look for to go ahead and see like liquidity, right? So rather than seeing us, pull back into an area like this and create like institutional candles or like, a good bottom, we've really just created an area of liquidity. So because of that, I think that's going to be an easy target for a lower time frame kind of play. And I think it's just about, like we said, with dollar, getting another sweep down on dollar, I think would help Euro USD go ahead and take some of these internal points that I just talked about, like here, right? These are internal points of liquidity. So if we get one more sweep above here, then that could give us a sell-off down. But really, even if we make a new high and we don't take these lows, I'm still going to favor Euro USD to come down relative to this zone. So I think that this zone is what we're going to react off of. Again, we've already kind of tapped into the push to the upside that's happened here. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is the high, but we could get one more. It's also a possibility. But I do think that we react off of this pullback here on Euro USD as a whole to then go ahead and push us down again, right? So that's my idea there with EU, right? GU, potentially, we've already seen that as well. GU is a lot lower compared to EU, as we can see, like EU is already getting closer to its high, whereas GU here is holding these levels at the moment. So GU could be something that holds order flow, while EU actually ends up swooping through order flow here, right? So maybe we can use, this high as a zone, right, for GU, right, considering that that's what we're already close to. We're creating relatively equal highs in that area. And if not, then we're just going to look for this extreme area here, right? But yeah, if we get the scenario where EU holds this high, then I would probably expect GU to also hold this high here, right? So definitely an interesting area to look at, especially considering 2-hour wise, we can see it as well. 4-hour wise, it's also a trap candle. So it is a fractal zone here that we could see get hit. So I'll go ahead and draw this up here as well, right? And then, yeah, EU again, kind of aligning with that, but instead seeing it sweep internally. Now, AU, again, we're still in the zone that we've been looking at. Now we've actually taken this high here. Looks like we actually had a recent sweep here as well. So this is going to be an interesting one to look at. It does look like a lower time frame sweep because it's more of a wick on the 1 hour and the bigger time frame. So maybe we do get one more high here on AU. But we're potentially building up for that short. So really now we're in this zone, the more extreme area. So I think that, again, it's just about waiting to see when do we get that lower time frame confirmation, where we get like 1 hour institutional candles and stuff. We haven't really got that yet. Looks like we have a 30-minute institutional candle here, but that's too low to be talking about for Wyckoff Sundays. We want to see those happen more so, at the right times of day, right? So I think that looking at the higher time frame, we'll probably get another high and then continue down there for AU as well. All right, guys. USD CAD, we drew up this zone a long time ago. I think it's a daily trap candle here. So we'll see if that can end up getting tapped into. But yeah, if we do see EU and AU hold up, then maybe this zone here on USD CAD can also hold up. Right, we could see that sweep that took place right there. Right, maybe a pullback down into this area could end up giving us a buy zone as well. I do like how we had this buy up and then we swept, right? So that's pretty good. USD Chef, yeah, we got liquidity down here. So this isn't really something that I would want to take advantage of if this is going to be the low on dollar. If we do end up getting another sweep down on dollar, then USD Chef will probably be the one to use because it'll be taking this liquidity and getting back into this reaccumulation. So this could still play out if dollar wants to do another sweep, right? If this is the low, then I think EU and GU are probably the better ones to use. All right. And AU even actually as well. Cool. So let's move into metals. So with gold, We spoke about the zone here for sells. It held that zone really nicely last week, but we can obviously see the potential for a change, given the push to the downside that we had here, that we can see with the red zone, right? So we had these relatively equal lows. Excuse me. We had these relatively equal lows here, right? We tap back into those really beautifully. It was very difficult to position into those areas. I also like how, this sweep here happened. So because it happened like this, and it was very difficult for price to get into this level, to be honest, that kind of does show strength for me, right? So, I think there is some potential for gold actually starting to come higher because, I mean, even if we look at here, we're coming back into an area where previously there was also some good manipulation that brought us higher, right? So it is starting to look like it's holding these levels pretty nicely. And then maybe after that, maybe if we end up sweeping one more time, right, get back up into imbalances like that, then we can go ahead and come lower and give us that final sweep that we had spoken about on previous Wyckoff Sundays. But it's tough to say, if that sweep down can even happen. Until we really see order flow break to the downside, then that would really, change. That would really change a lot, right? That would really change a lot if we got this order flow to break without breaking these highs. Then it's like, okay, the sweep is coming now. But right now, we just got to follow what we see. And I think that what we see is this bullish order flow more so than the bearish, as well as the fact that this trend line hasn't even been taken. This high that we expected hasn't been taken. So I kind of do see those as targets, right? So I'm kind of going more towards the buy side after seeing the price action last week. And then even here, like we spoke about on silver, right? That low there, I mean, so difficult to position in there. We want to look at which side is harder to position into, and I think here the buyers have had a tougher time. When we look at the lows, how fast we've reacted off of the lows, how many times we swept off of the lows, it's hard to position in buys right now. The sells have been relatively simple. So yeah, that's what I'm saying there. I think that gold and silver have some potential for bullishness coming this week. Now indices, I mean, again, what a move, right? We've had pretty much ever since taking those equal lows on NAS and, coming a little bit lower, right? We had this accumulation. I think this might be, our next bullish move to the upside, right? Now, do we want to start buying up here? Obviously not. We're going to want to see pullbacks coming. This is our order flow area and this is our extreme area. So these are the two zones we really want to pay attention to if price can get back to these zones, right? And here is possible again because this is the last push down before we really came up. If we want to do order flow, this is the area. If we want to come into an extreme area, then this is going to be the zone that we're going to look for. Okay, that's NASDAQ. And you ended up selling off quite aggressively. Interesting. But yeah, so US 30 as well, same idea, right? I think this is our extreme area down here. Right, this would be probably the only zone I'd wanna play off of would be down in here. S&P, same idea, huge buy up, right? I think that again with indices, it's about switching over to the buys now. After we've really accumulated in those lows, right? S&P has a institutional candle here as well at the bottom, so this is going to be our order flow area down here. So we're going to need a sizable pullback if that's going to play out, right? Cool. So that's pretty much everything. Now it's crypto. So with crypto, we've had the sell-offs from the area. They haven't really been as aggressive as I've wanted. We've really gotten into new lows, accumulated, gotten into new lows and accumulated. So honestly, we might even see this hold. It is definitely still possible. For that to happen. Again, we did want to target down towards the 61 level, hopefully get into like more extreme areas for our buys. But whenever I see something like this and we just see that the market is just holding so well these previous highs, I start to get skeptical, right? I wouldn't really want to short in these areas. I'd either one, want to see some of them get swept, or two, probably even just see it continue, right? Obviously, the continuation is the more likely outcome given the fact that we didn't really break these lows previously, right? So, yeah, possible that this low is in now and maybe we're not going to get price to sweep the way that we wanted, right? But yeah, one thing's for sure, I won't be selling if we come back into there, given the context of, how this has all been playing out since then, right? Like we've just been making lows but accumulating, right? Making lows but accumulating. So it's not really giving me the signs that continued weakness is going to be coming based off of the lows that have happened, right? So with crypto, I'm probably going to take a step back, let it see what this does. Let it see if it does sweep, and then maybe we can follow up later on, like in something like this, right? But I wouldn't want to sell in the tops there. I'd want to see a real good reaction off of that level after taking highs. It's just my preference from a day trading perspective, right? Or we just see price just rocket through. So we'll have to see how this really reacts to that level there, above like 65.8 and below 67. If we can hold that, then that ends up being basically a potential sell zone if we do react, right? But if not, then we just let it buy. Okay, guys, so yeah, that's pretty much going to be the entire idea for the week. So let's see if dollar can end up holding up this low this week and giving us our push towards 102. All right, guys, so much love, much appreciation. I'll see you guys on the other side. Peace out. Deuces. Bye-bye.